Dudut Kate Mila Falcha. Welcome to Irish Granny Tarot. This is video number 3 of our book, Between Death and Life by Dolores Cannon. And where did we leave off? We left off at the beginning of chapter 7, talking about so-called bad lives. So the first thing that they, once again, just to remind everybody, all of this information may seem a little out of order, may seem a little scattered. It's the product of numerous hypnosis sessions with a variety of different subjects over the years. And she's tried to collate it, but sometimes it's a little bit repetitious. It gives an interesting, slightly different perspective from one person to another of what they see and experience. So this is the spoken word of people under hypnotic regression who are experiencing their time between lives and interacting in the spirit world and reporting back what they see and hear. So sounds like random pronouncements. It's what people have been telling Dolores Cannon. There's no such thing as a vengeful or a hateful God. There's no retribution. There's no need for punishment. Karma is an effect. It can also be a cause, but it's what motivates you to act, and it's what happens after you act. It's the cause and effect. So why are some people depraved? Why do some people's lives run smoothly? You bring in karma from a former life. It's all part of a plan. And it may seem punitive or awful if you look at it from one particular point of view only, one lifetime at a time. But not all people live easy lives. Not all people lead hard lives. We don't know the context of their other lives. The experience of a lifetime is a lesson to be learned. The lesson is the fruit of the lifetime. It's not about how easy it is. It's not about how difficult it is or how scary the larger world is. The purpose of reincarnation is to learn, and you can never learn all there is to learn. It's not to be getting things correct, but it's to continue to learn. Knowledge can't be completed in a simple lifetime. Many lifetimes have to be lived, the number of which depends on how quickly you advance, how hard you work, basically. So we need to view rebirth as a positive thing. It's loving and learning. It's not punishment and sorrow. It's all about your attitude. You have to, it behooves you to accept the things that happen in your life as lessons to be learned rather than resist constantly, oh, woe is me. Eeyore. It's better to ask yourself, what can I learn from this, or what can I do for somebody else out of this? And this is the part that I find really challenging to comprehend personally. You create what you live. And I suppose what they're saying is that before you incarnate, this is all planned by you. And that which you live, you create. And we're all evolving spirits. We're neither good nor bad. There are neither good nor bad lives. There are lessons. Bad lives are when you, like if you want to call a life bad, it's when you don't deal with your problems that you've already chosen yourself to deal with. Life has to be worked at. You can't just skate through the day. Now, some people seem to have, on the surface, when you look at their lives, very easy lives. Comfort, not horrible tragedies, not horrible traumas. The people that are beautiful and talented and wealthy and nice, those kind of people that we all, resent. You can't judge that either, because like they said in the last video, you don't know what they've been through, and you don't know what's planned for them to go through in the next life. This may be a well-earned rest, or it may be a rest in preparation, sort of marshaling the forces to get ready for the next life. Sometimes people who do really bad things aren't fully doing it consciously themselves. There are other forces at play, other karma at play. And it'll serve the purpose of showing others that this is how low a person can fail. Even Hitler, according to what they talk about, was a lesson to people, something to learn. And those kinds of people, 45, can still raise themselves back up by the choices that they make, by their work, by their preparation, by facing their problems. Dolores says to this person at this particular session, but the Bible says that we need to be perfect. And the Spirit says, well, the Bible is man-made and misinterpreted. It's not expected that you be perfect. It's expected that you strive to learn the lesson. And one learns what is perfect by experiencing what is not perfect. We can't get to a higher vibration if we don't understand what it is we're leaving behind. So it's as important to learn what is not perfect as it is to learn what is perfect. We can't understand what's given to us unless we experience what's taken away. That's why things sometimes seem so unfair. Many souls choose to experience difficulties that are awful when you look at them from the outside, but they've chosen that to accelerate their spiritual progress. It's intentional. They don't want to stay on the physical plane any longer than they have to. It's like people who double major in college. They don't feel that this physical plane is a true state of being for them, and they want to get through as much as they can. Lessons that rapidly accelerate your learning so that you don't incarnate again are the lessons that you seek out the most. There's no rule that says you have to experience the bad. You can come here and have an easy life, but the insight that comes from the struggle helps to understand the good, and that's a fact. You need to know sadness to appreciate happiness. So look with compassion on those in their most negative state. I know I get a lot of pushback from people when I say I even feel sorry for 45. Look with compassion on people like that. They're learning lessons that will allow them to become more positive. You may not pass the class this time around. But all of these difficult situations that we live through are a gift. That's, hard to comprehend sometimes. Look at the difficulties in your life and ask yourself, why would you choose such an experience? Disharmony in relationships, for example, it's a lesson. You may need to experience bad things to enlighten you so that they don't recur. You need to experience complementary realities. Experience could start out positive but become harmful. So like something might be really good. You might be born into a comfortable financial situation. But if you become indulgent, this can become harmful. If you are excessively indulgent, you can lose sight of the path you're supposed to be on. You can overdo good things as well as overdoing bad things. The worst punishment is what we deal out ourselves. I just realized I left my heater on. I hope that's not making horrible, annoying noises in the background. It's a little bit of a low hum, and I apologize, but we're back at the cold weather all of a sudden. And the tips of my fingers are frozen. So we are our own judge and jury. We are the ones responsible for evaluating our own progress. And when we're not in a physical state, we tend to be more honest with ourselves. We decide what is and isn't appropriate. We must decide our own penance when we transgress. You don't die and get judged by God. You don't die and you're like the Egyptians believed that everything gets your heart gets put on a scale, and if all of your bad acts outweigh your heart, then you're doomed. No. What happens is you see the things that you've chosen poorly, and Then you figure out how, okay, this is how I can fix that next time. We can lose insight with overindulgence, and it can distract us from the scope of our problems. But then a higher order can assist individuals in getting experiences that are necessary to clear the awareness. So spirit guides keep an eye on us, and when we really screw up, sometimes they'll hand us something more just to get us to, deal. When there are absolute laws, there will be contradictions. I thought that was a really interesting statement. Some get caught up in negativity and they just don't try to change. And you can lose sight of your path. You can get caught up in overindulgence. You can get caught up in the energies of the physical world. We're all warned before we reincarnate. You're warned before you come back here that you might get carried away. The soul must choose its own path. It's up to us. And we can get information from the Akashic records and universal truths, and then we have to work it out. Sin is basically just doing what you know is wrong. And even if you see somebody doing something that you believe is wrong, we're not supposed to judge, because that's part of their larger karmic lesson to make those choices. But you can't sin if you don't know something is wrong. It has to be a conscious choice. So if you do something which under other circumstances would be terrible for a person, but you don't realize that this is a bad thing, then you're not held accountable. You have to have morals to be able to sin. And remember, we talked about levels, planes of existence, and on the lower planes are entities that are, and people like psychopaths who are just not, they don't have a conscience, or they don't have the intelligence or whatever, and they do all these terrible things. Well, people have a conscience, usually, depending. Animals don't have a conscience. Animals are without sin. They don't know something is wrong. They'll do something for survival or for food, and we often remark on that. I mean, people talk about it all the time. Animals don't go to war against each other, although when you get into the higher primates, then it starts to become a little more interesting. If you do something without meaning to, or you don't realize what you're doing, it might be an offense against somebody, but it's a lesser sin. It's kind of a misdemeanor versus a felony. You have to learn to be aware of your fellow humans. That's part of the lesson. It's like, oh, I didn't realize. Well, that's on me. That's bad. But now moving forward, I do know that. So let's see how I behave next time. You don't want to hurt your fellow humans, because if you do, the pain is yours, which we say here all the time. If one person is suffering anywhere on earth, we're all suffering. So it's perplexing to me to be able to turn your back on the floods in Pakistan, or the situation in Eastern Europe, or, just the ongoing hellscape of famine and war and gangs in places like Africa and Haiti. We know this stuff is happening, and it's just overwhelming to be aware of it day by day by day. And it's a good sign if that sort of thing affects you in your heart, because that means you understand we're all connected. It's not easy, but it's meaningful, because you're aware and you're not callous. You have compassion. The religious idea of sin, like the 7 deadly sins, over and over and over again, and I know I'm going to repeat this again, but constantly they keep sending this message. Nonsense. This is all about controlling people. This is all about patriarchal, theocratic organizations trying to run other people's lives for their own benefits. But people have to work all of this out for themselves. You can't go door to door in pairs and try to talk people into a belief system. It doesn't work that way. There's no such thing as the pit of fire for punishment, for hell. Each soul has to work out their own bad juju. Once again, and as I said, this is information coming from a variety of different sources, interesting differences of religion, age, culture, socioeconomic background, life experience, and yet they're all saying the same thing. The Bible is not right. It's been changed to suit the people in power to keep control. Quoting them, it would be, don't do what we say or you're going to go to hell. If you don't do what we say, church people, then you're going to go to hell. That's absolutely not true. All of these texts may have begun somewhere in the past with the kernel of truth that is the Word of God, real truth, but it's been warped. The intent was true, but now they're full of inaccuracies and they're weaponized against people. Other great books are just as valuable. The Bhagavad Gita, the Quran. The Bhagavad Gita is a Sanskrit poem about morality and absolute ethical values. All paths lead in the same direction. You don't need to rely on only one path as the only way. In all paths are truths and falsehoods, and you have to discover that for yourself. And it's one of the reasons why I just have no time for missionary proselytizing. I had two come to my door the other day, and I just looked out the window. I mean, they're lucky I've been working really hard to be a better person, because usually I'd open the door and peel their skin off, just lecture them. So I just waved them away. It was the best I could do. Anyway, there are universal truths, but earthly truths may not be true for everybody. So what they're trying to say is not that there's no right way and wrong way, not that there's no right and wrong, good or bad, but that each of us has to find our own path, and one person's path may not be your path. And what's so important to do, and this is coming from the book, is to keep your mind open, to be questioning all the time, question authority, always question, and you will find the truth as it is understood by your vibratory, developmental, evolutionary, karmic, spiritual level, and we're all different. So this chapter is about bad people. So now we're going to talk about murderers. Why does someone become a criminal? And part of it is how they're raised. Now here we go. Nature versus nurture. How they're raised, abuse, parental neglect, and then what ends up happening is an adult who oversteps social boundaries. And this might be very dependent on the time and culture in which they're raised, but it largely depends on what they bring into this life. Spiritually, there are no criminals. What they're doing are people making choices that are doing themselves harm and retarding their own forward progress. Criminality is a manifestation of spiritual imbalance. And you're not a spiritual criminal, you're socially criminal. And that doesn't mean that there are no right and wrongs. It means that you are evolving and making mistakes. So a murderer may choose between lives to incarnate into a life and to die young, like they commit a crime and they are a murderer in one life. When they reincarnate, they might choose consciously as spirit before they reincarnate. This next life, I'm going to die young, and this is to teach me the loss, teach me the pain of loss, and just to know what a premature death feels like to the victim. They become the victim. That's just one example. So we always choose to come back knowing what's going to happen to us, to work on our karma and to learn lessons. However, you don't come back to be a murder victim and intentionally placing bad karma on the murderer. It's not like that. This is an agreement that your souls have made. I need to learn X, you need to learn Y. So this time around, when we encounter each other, you're going to do this to me, or I'm going to do this to you. And how we respond, do we make that decision? What lesson are we going to learn from it? If you came and were a victim and it was just kind of in a vacuum, it would be shifting negative karma onto somebody else, and that's not right either. So you might reincarnate into the family of a victim. You might reincarnate, like if you're a victim or if you're a murderer in the next life, you might reincarnate into a family of somebody who's a victim so you can feel what that's like. Or you might reincarnate as like the parents of a murderer and work out the karma with love. Somebody else, another subject, said that the murderer may take several lives to work out the karma of something like that. And those souls will be in close relationship over the next lives. Murder increases the time that you're stuck working out karma. And the cycles can go on for, a very long time. But the physical world is good for working out violent karma because the physical is base enough to handle the violent vibrations. I thought that was really interesting. So trauma may be dealt with between lives, but for working out the negative karma of violent acts, the earth is a great place because it's so low in vibration. In between lives, souls rest and then they work on these issues. They can opt to re-enter the physical world and will be allowed to if they are healthy enough. They have to be healed enough. Better usually for a soul to wait and learn lessons between lives, but some get impatient, and then that's a lesson in and of itself. Souls who don't work on themselves between lives can come back confused and then ask, why doesn't anything ever go right for me? Because they haven't really developed a plan of action before they incarnated. There are planes for souls who resist change to help them before they reincarnate. Therefore, you're not locked into a vicious karmic cycle. It's kind of like a retreat. Hell is a political device developed to have power over people, and specifically in the Christian faith to overcome the Gnostics, that group. It's like raising a child. If they do something wrong, you talk to them and they take some time out. And that's what happens to your soul. You do something wrong, you die. On the spirit plane, it's talked about and explained till you understand, and then you might have to take a little time out to heal and recoup, and then you come back. If you don't see your error, you may reincarnate into a similar situation, try to work it out again. It's like Groundhog Day. So a few souls, very few, are incorrigible. Most souls want to grow and be better. For the souls who don't care, there is a healing plane. It's a little bit like spiritual psychotherapy, and it's very slow progress. There's never a time or a place where a soul is tossed into hell to burn in hellfire forever. There is no hell. So then they talk about Hitler, and I thought this was so interesting. This never would have occurred to me. They said that Hitler, when he was born, his soul, he was a creative genius. He was an artist and he had massive artistic energy. But socially, economically, there was the Depression. It was, really bad in Germany. And his artistic drive was blocked. And his family was real patriarchal and against any of that nonsense. And it warped his outlook on life. It was a reflection of his father's karma. His dad refused to let him pursue creative things, and it stifled him, and it went negative. His error was in not handling his creative energy properly. He let it become destructive. He was twisted, but he wasn't damaged. He was an ordinary person who just went the wrong direction. Damaged souls have repeated cycles of negative karma. They're just stuck. Hitler this was his first time, his soul's first time. And he just didn't handle his lessons, which was how to handle, his big lesson was, how do you handle blocked creativity? This is your lot in life. How are you going to handle it? He was not as complicit in the evil. Now, this is a very interesting way to look at it. And please don't take this wrong. Don't take the book wrong. Don't take me wrong. I'm not saying what this might sound like. Not excusing him. But from a karmic point of view, the karma that he garnered was not as bad as the actual people who ran the concentration camps and the executioners and the guards. Giving the orders is a really bad thing and is really bad karma. But the people who carry out the orders and actually hurt people, it's even worse. I thought that was such an interesting perspective. And like somebody else we know, he was able to keep his own hands literally clean. Even souls like Jack the Ripper learn lessons from the bad acts they do. And they, I'm reading this and I'm thinking, who was he? Who was he? Ask them who he was. Souls may have volunteered to be in the situation that they're in as perpetrator, as victim, to learn lessons and help others learn. Remember that the life force, the consciousness, does not die, was not killed. It's not the tragedy that we perceive as physical beings, because as soon as they transfer, they go to another plane and everything's good. Death is a rearranging of molecules on a physical level and a displacing of consciousness from a vehicular enclosure, your body, to the free nature, its life simply changing form. Two souls can die side by side in the same event. One may be fine because spiritually is a person who's prepared for it. Between lives, just, boom, two die, boom. One is like, oh, okay, here I am and I expected it. The other is completely traumatized and has to go to the resting place a while because for whatever reason is spiritually not prepared. It depends on your soul's ability to understand, and there are a lot of factors that determine that. Type of death you have has actual meaning. It can erase great karma. A long, slow death is a learning process, and it can amass great good karma, because not only are you learning patience and humility, etc., 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 but people around you, loved ones, caregivers, people who hear your story, all learn lessons. Now, this next little bit is about suicide. It shouldn't last too long. I'll put my hand up like this when it's done. If you want to skip, just watch the screen, because I know this is hard for people, So the act of suicide, kill yourself. And what you do is you end your body before your spiritual journey is over. You're breaking a contract that you have made. And it throws the soul energy into a state of disharmony. So after death, your soul goes to the healing area or the contemplation area. It's on a plane of healing and resting. It's not this big negative thing that everybody worries about. Now, this is hard to hear, because I have a very good friend that killed herself. Suicide is considered one of the few real sins because it's wrong to take a life. And we're going to get into that later with babies. And it's very interesting what all these different people have to say. Really interesting. But as far as suicide goes, as an adult, this is an act that breaks your contract. So now you're going to incur more karma to deal with. That's the bad part of it, because people are sad and shocked, and you yourself have put an end to your opportunity to be here longer, and it creates a situation. So these people who do this are confused. They're not able to understand solutions available. They see no solution in the real life. So after death, What they work on to teach them before they reincarnate is how to broaden their outlook and understand more options, learn to work out your problems without giving up. And then you have another opportunity to try again. So it's not the bad, judgmental, doom and gloom thing it might feel like. That those left behind fear. It's not like that at all. This is a person who didn't see the options or didn't have the skills, left prematurely, will have an opportunity to heal, learn some more, and come back again. It's okay. So usually it's traumatic for the soul, and they don't reincarnate really quickly. They usually take a long time to get help and to heal. And it does create a lot of negative karma, which will have to be erased. So it's never really a solution. The best thing is what happens is you come back and you have a life with all the same problems, and then you learn to deal with them. That's the best that comes out of it. But you have to face situations that you're handed. You can't run away from them. You can't bury your head. You can't deny them. That just prolongs your process. Nothing is so bad it can't be worked out. When you commit suicide, you're trying to escape a problem or a series of problems, and all it does is amplify the problem. Just makes it worse. It has to be faced. Suicide is not a solution. It's an aspect of free will, but it's never a good part of karma. The family doesn't get the negative karma, but they certainly would get a strong lesson from the act. Okay, I think that's the end of it. I hope that helped people. I hope it gave me, I felt much better about my friend after I read that. So before life, you work with your guides to decide how much karma you can handle in this lifetime. What matters is that you try. Oh, suicide again, sorry. And if you do kill yourself, you create more problems for yourself. You still have to learn the original lessons. That's not so bad to hear. Chapter 8, the guides. These are guardians. They're spirits that usually as a soul you've been closely bonded with, and you work with them on the spirit plane, and oftentimes they'll be here in this life at some point with you. Some of them are higher, but some of them will come. And they're serving a purpose, working out their own karma by helping you. And in another lifetime, you may be their guide. It just depends. So no one is ever alone. You're never alone. You have to let them help you. You have to open yourself up to that. Most spirits have your best interests at heart, and it's easy to protect yourself from those who don't. Just say it out loud. Leave me alone. You experience guides as that voice inside you, that feeling, telling you don't do that, or okay. It's like the little angel and devil on your shoulders, in the cartoons. There's no devils, but it's that little negative voice saying don't do that, or the positive voice saying this is the right thing to do. Guides give you advice, but they won't tell you what you have to do. This is all up to you. They never make you do something. It's a partnership. They are assistants. You are the master of your destiny. They don't influence you. They assist and enlighten you. There's a difference. They don't push you. They inform you. You have the freedom of choice. You have absolute free will on the physical plane, and you should help others when you want to. You should help others when you feel you want to help. You should not feel coerced. So, sometimes I kind of struggle with that. I feel like, I should be doing this or I should be doing that. And if it's onerous, then it's kind of a negative thing, that you should do it because you want to do it. Forcing yourself or being forced to help others is worse than doing no help at all. Some of your guides may be for your whole entire life, like a guardian angel, or only for part of it because of particular challenges. They function as your life changes, and their job changes too. Guides are spirits, they're counselors, they're on a higher order, they're more knowledgeable. A guide, okay, oh wait, let me get this right here. Counselors versus guides, they're all guides. But guides are more intimate and immediate. Oftentimes people you know, people who hang around you, spirits who hang around you forever, maybe somebody you know from this particular life, is like my grandmother who's died ahead of you. Counselors are on a higher spirit level and may not have been in the physical world for a while. They're more knowledgeable. And here's an interesting little tidbit that somebody told Dolores Cannon. You don't need to give your guides names. In fact, names have vibrations, and so don't name your guides. It may be the wrong vibration. Just know your guides by the feeling of their vibration. I thought that was so interesting. You may eventually be a guide, but you still need your own guide because none of us is perfect. It's all decided by how the energies fit together. No one person decides. It's a group decision. And it's apparent to souls what they need in the spirit world. And then we come here and lose all touch. A little bit about stillbirths, and then we'll talk about it more. So if this is upsetting, give me 2 seconds. Stillbirths and sudden infant death are lessons for parents. It's not about the baby at all. The soul in the baby volunteers to help the parents with the lesson. And we're going to get into this later, and it's really interesting. I think it'll make a lot of people feel better. So, Chapter 9, God and Jesus. God is neither male nor female. God is energy. So it's okay to talk about the goddess. It's okay to talk about God the Father. But the reality is we're talking about spiritual energy, and it's a balance. It's a force that holds all things together. And I thought this was so funny. Somebody called God the rebar of the universe. And the spirits say over and over in this book, and then just reiterate in this chapter, that language is ineffective. They can't explain it to us, and we wouldn't understand it because there are no words. Sound is slower than light, but sound and light all have color. They extend into levels that we can't see or hear. You know, there's infrasound and ultrasound, and the universe is full of it. It goes through the planets. Energy is all there is. Now, this is their attempt at collating all the explanations of what the spirit world looks like, and what the planes are like, and what the energy is like, and what God and spirits are like. And I tried to summarize it. There's lengthy descriptions, and it's just impossible to summarize. But I'll do my best. So we're talking spirit, God, sound, light, all energy all around us. It all has color. It all has music. It's just beautiful. Energy is all there is. Energy transforms itself into structures as it fluctuates. Energy is organized, and it creates all as it fluctuates. The next stage in human development is to realize that everybody is in charge of his or her own fate, and what we desire will come to pass. Things that seem to just happen are the result of past causes, karma, thought. Spirits from higher dimensions may decide to come and help us to raise our awareness, which is the goal, raising our awareness. There are many universes. Each has a central and a local council. They're like spiritual governments on different levels. And I don't even know if I will read this. It's all about the hierarchy of spirits and gods and how we fit in, and it's just really complicated. And I would recommend reading this book. I mean, this is a synopsis. I've skipped things. I've tried to cherry pick what seemed really important. There's more to it. You get a better sense of the experience of being in a spirit world. It's all very interesting. So God is not human. The idea of Jesus as a son was made up for people to try to understand on a very basic level. It was not meant to be taken literally. Jesus was an emissary from a high spiritual reality closer to God, an evolved spirit, a bodhisattva. And he was actually the first from that level to come to the physical world as a human. Now, other cultures might believe that other entities came earlier, may not have been from exactly that level. I'm guessing. There have been others, and some will be known, well known, and some will be street people, ordinary people who, live in a tent under the bridge, but these are advanced souls you just don't know. Jesus chose to put himself into the human hands. His death was not divine destiny. His death was not God doing it to save whatever, no. This Christian belief, the whole entire structure of the Christian belief system is in error, as are almost all religions, because they are too basic of an understanding. It's an attempt to put high spiritual concepts into physical words, and it's just almost impossible. What was the point then of Jesus's death? It was to show the world that injustice exists, that the world at that point was in such a state of authoritarianism and injustice. The poor, the sick, the enslaved. There was a lack of compassion in general, and he volunteered to bring spiritual truths to people, and then it all got messed up. The notion that he died for our sins is just a rationalization put in the Bible on a very basic level. We need a much broader understanding to understand what his message, his life, and his experience were. You cannot divide God into Father, Son, Holy Ghost. This is a very basic way to look at forms of spirit energy. They're all one. It's just ways of describing aspects of the same thing. It's simplified, and these are not my words. These are coming from, somebody else. Simplified for small human minds to visualize. Thanks. So, chapter 10, Satanic Possession and Demons. This is a concept. It's not a real entity. It's a concept. Now, there are mischievous and malicious entities on a very basic low level. There are troubled souls who might torture people when they see an opening, but there's no devil with a pitchfork waiting to burn you in hell. Negative elementals will use misunderstanding for their own purposes. They're given power by the evil acts of people. The devil made me do it. And when you say that, you'll use that as an excuse. You're giving them more energy. It's not true that you have to have evil to balance good. The idea of God versus the devil? No. Completely erroneous concept. It's a rationalization to make us feel comfortable to explain what we see in the world, and it's not true. And multiple people told her this. It stifles growth because it stifles understanding of what is true. Hell is just a threat for adults. There is no physical hell. The mind creates its own hell at the moment of death if it's what you expect. If you realize you're dying and you start, oh my God, I'm a horrible person, then, you have to give yourself grace. You have to forgive yourself. Church brainwashes, and it makes people feel a fear of hell even when they've done nothing terrible. And by making people fear hell, the church creates it in people's minds, and you see what you expect. You'll get out of it. You'll come to a realization. But it's not fair that these power players manipulate us that way. People eventually realize that it's a construct of their own fear, that it has no power to hold them, and they move on and everything's good. But, shame on them for doing that to people. Makes me really angry, which is not good either. See, and they're creating that. There is no evil. There are misguided acts. Evil is really disharmony. Now, it might sound like semantics, but there is no incarnate evil. There is no devil. Satan is a huge fallacy. Our belief in good versus bad is inaccurate. It's an inaccurate understanding of cause and effect. Our souls are energy, our thoughts are energy, and we can bring on hell on earth. It's a willful act by thinking and acting it. We need to counteract this disharmony with fresh energy. Intention is everything. Thought with the intention of love can change a situation. So if you think about that bad things, that is not inherently going to create bad things. You think about that bad things with the intention of mind, how can we fix this? What can we do to make it better? Then you're good. So our idea of evil is just an excuse. It's a lack of responsibility by trying to find something to assess blame. It's easier to blame the devil than to take responsibility and say, oh, I screwed up. Evil comes from the minds of people not taking responsibility. By believing in the devil, people set up situations that seem to prove his existence. This is true of the evil and of the holy. People's thoughts, their intent, create energy, not a creation of an entity. It's a pooling of energy. Humanity has been in the chains of fear for too long, she was told. We must accept our own responsibility. There are elementals on earth, elemental spirits that are warped by contact with negative human energy, and they will congregate in an area to increase emotions and feelings. And the two examples that they give of these places where negative and elemental energy collates from negative human energy: churches and battlefields. So all you need to do is ask the eternal being to protect you, the good eternal being, and you're fine. Say it out loud, and you're fine. Possession is the influence of warped elementals. They're below human souls. We talked about that. They're loosely organized energy. They're drawn to imbalance in karmic energy and physical situations. They don't really mean harm, but they're drawn to a vacuum of imbalance. It's cause and effect. The possessed person just needs to meditate to reestablish balance, and they'll dissipate. All this exorcism stuff is making it worse. They're like psychic vampires. They feed on your energy. So your goal is to just try to make your energy better. Surround yourself with white light. They have to leave if you say, I bid you to leave in the name of Christ. If you vocalize that out loud because he was an advanced soul. Visualize white light around you in the shape of a pyramid to protect you. You're good to go. For those who believe in evil and create it with their minds, then it's real. But it's real because they've created it for themselves. At the same time, it's not real for those who don't believe in it. The fall, the fallen angels, was just a move from a high consciousness to a lower consciousness, a forgetting of who we really are, and the fall from Eden. People who are dogmatic about religion and philosophy have lost sight of how things really are. You can reassure yourself with that knowledge the next time the fundamentalists come out to play. Chapter 11, Ghosts and Poltergeists. These are entities or spirits that can focus their consciousness to manifest on a physical level, but they have to work at it. Intense emotions can actually bring them about, which is why you'll see them sometimes with adolescents, because adolescents, are emotionally in turmoil. Most are just amusing themselves, and it's mischief, and it's not meant to hurt you, and it's not meant to be harmful. And when they see you freak out, it's kind of amusing to them because they're unevolved, and so don't freak out. Sometimes the intent is to get the observer to realize that there are unseen things. It's kind of a lesson. Sometimes ghosts are projections from the observer, like you're actually seeing a former life of yourself. and you're aware of that life on a spiritual plane. Interesting that my little machine starts making noise right now. But some are really spirits, and they it's soul energy from an individual, either perceived by the individual as some other soul energy or projected by the individual. You can sometimes see earthbound entities that are trapped in a moment in time, like, the monastery where the monks walk down the choir loft, and it's seen over generations and generations. They can't find release of their consciousness. It's locked into the physical. They can't see their spirit guides trying to help them, and they need to be enlightened and released, and anybody can help them with that. Sometimes they can be so locked into this energy that they don't even see the physical people trying to help them. I thought that was interesting. Adolescents can cause poltergeist activity from their own energy, which they're unaware. They really, it's chaos in there when you're 15. It's a manifestation of their own psychic talents. Energy is related to going through puberty, and pent-up emotions are released in this poltergeist activity. So it's not like there's something there. It's their energy is just chaotic and spilling out. And it's easy to get rid of an unwanted entity. This is not something that we should be worried about. You invoke goodness, God, Jesus, light, any bodhisattva. You invoke the help of higher beings and send that all off into its own enlightenment, and you're good. Earthbound spirits are tied here. They're held by karma. The subconscious just assumes it's got more time to work on stuff, and they hang around. They are tied by problems that they don't want to admit that they can be released from, like spiritual sleepwalking, or they're held here by someone in grief. And I thought this was really important to know. When somebody you love dies, the harder you grieve, it's appropriate to grieve to a point, but the harder and longer you grieve, the longer you tie them to the physical world. And they usually know that they're dead, but they hope, they want to get back to the physical plane because they feel your feelings. So, and some don't realize they're dead. So you do them no help. You pray for the people who have died. Spirits who linger use familiar places in the physical plane as a crutch out of fear. Sometimes we'll see an echo of their energy. The spirit's locked into a memory of a physical life because they're afraid to move on. And of course, time has no meaning, so this can go on for years, and to them it's not years. Usually when people interact with spirit, they're interacting with a guide who has your good intentions at heart. Just always keep the white light and you're good. Excessive grief holds you back karmically, and it holds the dead back karmically. Just know that this is a temporary separation. That you can reassure yourself. You can miss somebody and be sad, but they're the lucky ones, and it's temporary. So, okay, I'm going to stop here. This is the end of number 3. And we'll begin number 4 here in a second, and stick around. There's more to come, and I'm going to turn that stupid thing off. So I'll be right back.